It's also great to have in the studio a member of Governor McCrory's cabinet. The Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services, Rick Braiser, is in Greenville today, and we're fortunate that he was available to stop by and visit with us a little bit here live in the studio. Good morning, Secretary Braiser. How are you?
Good morning, Henry. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Nice to see you as well. Tell us what you're doing in Greenville today.
Well, we've got several purposes. One is obviously we want to make sure that the department is responding as actively and as supportive of a manner to all the folks that are hurting as a result of the flood. We're here to meet with the folks, the chancellor at ECU, the medical school. We're going to be meeting with Biden Health. Then we're going to be heading over to Walter B. Jones, which is one of the residential facilities that we manage. So we're trying to really spend time in relationship as well as problem solving here.
Well, I tell you, I've heard this from so many people. And I know we're in the middle of an election, and this will sound political, but the truth of the matter is, I think the governor has done an incredible job handling the situation and the devastation that we've had in Eastern North Carolina. He's always been a friend to Eastern North Carolina. He's been down here constantly. He's been calling. He's been asking, what do you need? There were some things that came up Friday with some folks that felt like that people were price gouging. He got the SBI right on that. I mean, he has been very responsive, and for that, we say when you go back, tell him the folks here in Eastern North Carolina really appreciate his response to the disaster we've had here.
Absolutely, Governor McCrory is truly leading on the ground. He's demonstrating operational leadership. He's demonstrating his heart. And as you said, that he's engaged in solving the real problems that people are facing here. You see it in the way that he personally engages with people. But what's a real privilege to see as well is the leadership that he shows at the Emergency Operations Center as well. So whether it's at a statewide level or is at a person-to-person level, he's demonstrating his heart and he's demonstrating his leadership.
Yeah. Secretary Rick Braiser, the Secretary of Health and Human Services for the state of North Carolina. I wanted to ask you about some other things that have been a very large priority for you since you've been Secretary, which is drug abuse. We're also worried about that. We just see the problems that are taking place not only here in North Carolina, but in our whole society with drug abuse. And there's some initiatives underway that you and the governor have begun to help with that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Well, you can almost start back from when Governor McCrory came into the administration. One of the first things that he did was really under his leadership, they passed the Good Samaritan law, which more or less said that if you're helping somebody who's in crisis, drug abuse or an overdose crisis, that information can't be used against you. So it was a way of beginning to work on destigmatizing and making sure that people who need help get help. More recently, the governor, when I came on board about a year ago, Governor McCrory established his task force on mental health and substance use disorders. And we had a dedicated task force on substance use. It was chaired by Sheriff Asa Buck, who's from Carteret County.
Yes, Sheriff, yeah.
Part of those recommendations involved things that were ultimately passed by the legislature. So, for example, now we have availability of naloxone, which is this opioid reversal drug. Anybody could walk into a pharmacy without any questions being asked and now gain access to naloxone, this life-saving drug. By the way, we're only one of 3 states that has a standing statewide order.
Now, let me ask you a question about that. Do you have to have a prescription for that?
No, not at all.
You just walk into a pharmacy
Absolutely.
and say you need it.
Absolutely.
And what does this drug do? It's a reversal of opiates?
Exactly. So there are people who have go into an overdose situation. And so it's a way of injecting this drug in them. And it basically it reverses the attachment that opioids have to the body. So it literally replaces them with this drug, and as a result, it reverses an overdose situation. Now, the purpose of doing that is ultimately so, you can't treat somebody that isn't alive, right? So the idea is not to use this as a mechanism just for continuing the pattern. It's a way of saving that person's life so that we can redirect them to treatment. So it's a way of moving from, if you will, from a punitive mindset to a supportive mindset. The syringe exchange law was passed under Governor McCrory's leadership. This is essentially saying, hey, listen, it's an economic situation, it's a safety consideration. Let's make sure that people who are using substances have clean syringes so that we can reduce the rate of HIV transmission. Studies showed it'll be reduced by 80%. Hepatitis C, reduced by 50%. Needle stick injuries to law enforcement officers, reduced by 66%. Now, these are, if you will, things of just stemming the tide a little bit. But there are systematic investments being made under Governor McCrory's leadership. So, for example, now we're putting in place a prescription monitoring system, a controlled reporting system, so that when physicians are prescribing opiates, they need to enter that information into this reporting system so that if there is a person who's doctor shopping, there will be visibility to that.
Right,
exactly, and we'll be able to stop that and redirect that person to really support.
Yeah. I'm a child of the 70s, and I grew up, I went to ECU, and you could smell the marijuana burning down the hall and that kind of thing. And,
sure.
And we thought that was a drug problem.
Right.
Anyone who was using heroin back in those days, you thought, oh, my Lord.
Right.
I mean, that's big time. That's heavy duty.
Right.
Somebody's lost their mind to use heroin. But unfortunately, heroin has become the drug of choice.
Right.
And it's become cheap.
It has.
For a lot of people, and it's killing people. It's just frightening.
Absolutely. In terms of the number of people that it's killing, roughly the same number of people who die in car accidents in North Carolina per year, roughly 1,000 per year, are dying from overdoses due to heroin or prescription opiates. As you indicated, heroin has become pure and cheap. It's roughly $20 to $30 a dose. And we see a lot of migration of people who were on opioids, which are prescription versions, and once that runs out, they still have an addiction to those opioids, and then they transition to heroin. Is one pathway that we see. Right. So what we're trying to do is to, if you will, make sure that there are proper prescribing patterns in place. Second, to make sure that we're redirecting people who do have substance use issues, redirecting them to treatment. And that's a key focus of the governor's.
Secretary Rick Braiser, the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And I got to hand it to you, by the way, because you've stayed out of the media. You've been a very low-key member of the media. Your predecessor, Dr. Aldana Vosch, she just got beat up unmercifully in the media, it seemed like, when she first came in as Secretary of Health and Human Services. But there was so many problems in that department.
Correct.
When she came in, and she, I got to know her on a personal level. I think she's a wonderful person, and it's amazing how she, the sad thing about that is all the media hits and political hits that this department took during those times, and now things are running very smoothly as a result of the changes that she made and the management that she put in place there, and then you continuing that. We don't hear anything about your department anymore, so I guess that's a good thing, right?
I agree with you. She made a number of very courageous decisions, at times not popular at all. And what we're seeking to do is to really create even stronger collaborative ties between ourselves and the legislature, as well as the community. So it's all about a culture of collaboration, but a culture of execution as well, meaning just getting things done.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. Nice to see you.
Take care, Henry.
Secretary Rick Braiser, the Secretary of Health and Human Services for the state of North Carolina on Governor McCrory's cabinet.